The beginning of any project is always going to be very difficult. For me, I always find it to be the hardest part of, well, basically any sort of creative endeavor. And the reason being for that is this kind of thing called the blank page. And for those that don't really know what the blank page is or what the fear of it, it's basically this sort of state of paralysis that you get from overthinking things, because once you have a blank page, there's infinite possibilities. It can be anything. And the only thing that really stops you from just diving right in is basically the weight of your expectations, what it is that you expect of yourself to be able to create every time you pick up the pencil to draw pretty much anything. And the same is always going to be true whenever you decide to endeavor into, say, a long-term project, such as what I have been doing for, well, the past year. And that's fairly, when I say long-term, 1 year isn't really that long, and the scope or the scheme of like long-term projects, but either way, all right. So it was a problem that I dealt with a lot and that I still honestly am dealing with to this day, which is basically the blank page. And the reason for that is because, well, the project still really is missing this sort of core identity that basically informs every aspect of, the actual piece. And it can be very difficult, right? I would know because I've been struggling with this thing for a long time now. And the thing that I basically decided to try, because initially this project, it came from a background of like game development, because at the time I really got into game development, and I ended up making a game, but I didn't really like it because artistically it was all game, no art. This one I wanted to do the opposite. So this one was a lot more art focus and less game focus, even though it doesn't really make sense, but it doesn't matter. The only thing you really need to understand is that I wanted to come at this next project from a perspective of imbuing more art and more of my personality into it. So that way it can be more fun for me to actually develop, and it can be a lot more rewarding to see it actually exist in the world, because the issue that I had with my last project was a lot of effort, but the final product wasn't very rewarding to me, because as an art piece, it was just awful. There was really no art to it. So one of the things I decided to do to sort of change my approach, and, once again, right, the blank page comes up. How do you come up with something? And over the years, I've sort of come up with this like kind of process that I've noticed come up time and time again. And what that thing is basically constraints, right? So I don't know if you've ever heard about it, but there's this kind of, I guess, phenomenon where you're able to be a lot more creative whenever you have constraints placed on you. And that's why the blank page tends to be like this very difficult thing to overcome, because a blank page has no constraints outside of, the drawing materials that you're allowed to use, but that's more of a physical constraint. And if we're talking about it in the digital aspect, then there really are no constraints whatsoever, because you could do anything with a blank page, right? The possibilities of what you can morph that into is limitless, right? It can be a piece of abstract art. It can be a piece of fine art. It can be a painting. It could be a sketch. It could be line art. You know what I mean? Like it's infinite. And if you look at art just in general, there's a very broad range and broad spectrum, and there's so much that you can do. And thus, the blank page, there's so much possibility that, right, there's like so much potential to turn it into basically just about anything. And it can be overwhelming. And this is even true, like I said, at a very larger scale. So I came up with this idea of constraints. And, one of those things is basically you factor in, at least for me, right? I factor in my personality, and I ask myself, first and foremost, what is it that you want to draw? What is it that basically piques your interest? And for me, in this project in particular, the excuse was that I wanted to make a game, and I knew I wanted it to be an action game. Why, you may ask? Well, because I wanted to draw action, right? I wanted to draw cool monsters, and I wanted to draw like action and fighting scenes between, cool characters and these cool monsters. And, ever since I was a kid, that's just kind of the stuff that I've been into. And I'm pretty sure I'm not alone in saying this. Like, in my teenage years, Bleach was like one of those things that, really big inspiration for me. And surprise, surprise, right? It basically encompasses a lot of what it is that I'm talking about. Cool characters fighting one another with, the occasional, like, really cool monsters mixed into it. Back when hollows were like a really big factor in the story. they're kind of taking a backseat now, but And, at the time, the thing that really, like, I guess piqued my interest in sort of exploring that avenue once again, because previously I've been doing a lot of character art, and I sort of kind of forgot my roots. And by roots, I just mean as a kid, I drew a lot of, like, action stuff. I pretended that I would, like, make comics or manga or whatever. And I would just draw a lot of fight scenes amongst characters. Again, just replicating a lot of the stuff that I would see from Shonen Jump, because that was the sort of thing that I was very interested in. So that's exactly what I did for this project, right? I just sat down, I designed a really cool main character, and then I decided to just add some monsters to it. And, I basically sat down, compiled like a list of these like really cool things that I saw. And just as a shout out to I guess shed some light on it. Not that it needs any shouting out, but like a lot of the endings for Chainsaw Man I really loved because they were very like creative. And just watching them made me, I don't know, like it just made me want to create, right? Like it inspired me very deeply, especially the third ending, to the point where I wanted to go and like do some more exploratory pieces and sort of challenge my quote unquote style up to that point and just see how far I could push it, especially for this project, right? How far I could push things and sort of make things funner to draw. So this project, because I normally don't venture too much into the abstract, but this project definitely does that a bit more. And I will say that it's been a lot of fun. So after I had like all that stuff compiled, just I had like all my references for things that I wanted to do, and I established very early on what it was that I wanted to draw, just being very blunt and honest about what that was. I then sat down and I just started to brainstorm. And prior to this piece, the one that I'm painting right now, actually, I did an exploratory one that was like an hour long. And here you can see it on screen. It's just two skulls floating in a void, and there's just lots and lots of color, right? And I remember when I did this piece, I had an immense, like, it was very fun. And honestly, I couldn't explain it to you. I guess it's like one of those things where, at least on the abstract portion of art, because it's sort of something that I've also been learning as well from this project, because there's a technical side to art, or the scientific part, and then there's the abstract. And this one very much does elevate the abstract. But sometimes, it's just like the raw motion of just literally putting pen to paper is like very fun, and just sometimes just making like all these scribbles. No rhyme or reason, not thinking about any kind of science, no anatomy, right? There's no real story. There's no reason why these things exist. It's just literally expression for the sake of expression. It's like just, I guess, art in its pure sense. And I hadn't done that for a while because, once you sort of kind of want to get better at a skill, you tend to end up focusing a lot more on the fundamentals, and the fundamentals are very scientific. There is nothing creative about the fundamentals of art. So this was like more on the art side of stuff. And like I said, I had a lot of fun with it, just literally just like scribbling. Like that's literally what I would do a lot of time, just scribble. If you look at the piece and you ask yourself, why did I choose to add that color there or that stroke? There was no intentionality at all. It was pure instinct or just pure expression, just for the sake of expression. And like I said, it was very fun. So then from that piece, since I found it to be like very successful, I thought, okay, what if I try to take it and, sort of pull it outside of the realm of abstract, because that piece is very abstract. That's what it is. But I wanted to ground it more and, make it, I guess, on this sort of arbitrary scale that I'm talking about, or spectrum between abstract art and scientific, for lack of a better term. I guess you could call it realistic, but either way. I decided to pull it more into the realism aspect. And by that, I just mean, grounding it in a more concrete sense and making it more of an illustration that has a kind of story attached to it, as well as things that are more identifiable to us as humans, opposed to just pure abstract scribbles. So what I mean by that, right, because in this particular piece you can see here, there's a character, there's an actual like background and environment that it takes place in that you can like look at, interpret, and understand, hopefully, right? Although the background is a little vague, and I did that on purpose for the story, because again, the point of this piece, I'll talk about that later. Well, what it means to me, kind of. It doesn't matter. I don't typically like talking a lot about art and what things mean, just because it kills a lot of the fun that I get from creating and sharing it. I like to hear people's interpretations. But either way, right? Sorry about that. That was just a little tangent going back to what I was saying. right? So if you look at it, it's a lot more grounded in realism, and there's a lot more stuff that's actually going on, opposed to the first exploratory piece that I did, which was very experimental. So I sat down and I tried it out. Honestly, this piece gave me a very rough time, and you can probably see it near the end of the video. It's probably where we're at right now, because in the very first, I was just struggling with my fundamentals, really. Values was just, I was not having a good day. And I almost wanted to give up, but I just kept going and persevered until I actually finished the piece because, well, I really needed it. This project really needed this piece because, like I said, it's a very important thing. That once I have it now, I'm actually very glad that I sat down and I struggled through it and that I made it. Because I'm happy to say, right, as you can see, this is the final piece. And it's all its glory. And the sort of value of this piece, right, in a sort of objective sense, right? So this is not talking about the art, the content, or the subject. I'm talking about the objective utility of the piece that it provided to me. And the reason why it was important is because it allowed me to sort of identify the voice or style for this project. Because prior to this piece, I did not have that, and that was the issue. Right, the whole blank page thing, I was just meandering. I had no real direction in terms of where to explore and what this project wanted to be. But with this piece, what it gave me was a clear sort of a lighthouse, right, a beacon, I don't know. A sort of point of reference in which I could ground myself and my future explorations that you're going to be seeing here if you decide to follow the channel. Because, project's not done, it's still kind of in the air. But either way, it gives me like this nice point of reference in which I can now pivot off of and explore, and having this comfortable place that I can always return back to. That, because again, every time I look at this piece, it gives me like this this sense of, I guess, what would be the correct term? It gives me this sense of potential. I look at it and I see the potential of what this project could be. I see the beginnings of me finding the voice of this project. And this piece specifically fills me with, I don't know, inspiration, right? Like every time I look at it, I get kind of inspired, and it makes me want to create and work further on this project just because I have it. And I guess it's funny to me in a sense, or ironic, because the piece itself is very vague. In terms of story, characters, a lot of it's very vague. And, because a lot of it's an impression, really. At least in my interpretation of it, right? A lot of it's an impression. But when I look at it, I can project so much onto it, and it gives me like this nice point of reference in which I can envision what this project could be. And that is, one of the reasons why I'm very happy that I made this, and, I guess why I'm showcasing the piece. I think it's really cool. So, all that being said, all right, that's all I have for now. In the future, very soon, I'm going to be doing a lot more of these because, like I said, the project still is kind of missing more of a concrete, like the little details of what makes up this piece, a lot of the action and stuff like that. So that's kind of the stuff that I'm going to focus on now, and I'm just going to continue this exploratory path because I still have to explore and do a lot of these sort of pieces of art. And honestly, I think you could call this in production a key art or something. It's just one of those pieces that you make, these illustrations that sort of, their purpose is to give you an idea, a feeling of what the project is and what the project can be. And they're very nice to have. On my previous project, I never did that because I assumed since I'm solo, it would be a waste of time. But like I said, this project's different, doing things different. And so far, that's been a lot more successful for me to just focus on the art. And even then, right, there is another part of this, as I stated. Art projects have a voice of their own, so the more that I explore, there is no real guarantee that this thing would even want to be a game anymore. That's just kind of how it started. But, I'm sort of keeping an open mind, because maybe I might develop this further and think, oh, this would actually work really good as a comic, opposed to a video game. Or maybe I do end up still making the video game, because it just fits perfectly, right? I don't know. And that's kind of those things that I'm going to have to sit down and just paint more. And once I have more of those paintings and illustrations, I will be able to come up with a more concrete answer in terms of what it is that I should do with this IP and this project in general. So either way, that's it. If you like the piece, it's going to be up on the store. You can buy it. All the money goes towards supporting me. And that's it. That's all. See you in the next one.